The mix of soy and pea protein, chickpeas, beetroot, nutritional yeast, and coconut fat is formed into steak-like shapes using a 3D printer.
I find it incredibly disturbing that our culture wants us to just eat what they are serving. And I'm sorry, I am not eating fake meat. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I am dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to talk all about food, but in a very particular way, not just because I am the cooking priest with the whole faith and food movement, but also because during the Lenten season, everyone is absolutely obsessed about food. What am I going to eat on a Friday during the Lenten season? As if the Catholic Church has the power to make people think about what they're putting into their bodies, minds, and spirits. But before we jump into this conversation, I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, please click subscribe. Make your comments. Let other family and friends know about our show. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider joining us on our Patreon community, because with only $5 every month, you'll get access to a ton of great content, but also some special perks. And it is truly the only way we can continue to dish out faith, culture, and commentary. So please subscribe and support us on Patreon. And now let's jump right into it with our conversation about food. And what does our Catholic Church tell us about food? In this section of our faith conversation about food, I just want to let you know that food is obviously so powerful to Jesus Christ that he becomes our food. People always ask me, why do you always focus on food? Because Jesus does as well. And in the post-resurrection accounts, I can just give you 3 quick citations about food, how it is that which reveals who Jesus is. First, you think about on the road to Emmaus, Jesus revealed himself in the breaking of the bread. And then you go to that account in the upper room where the door was locked. Jesus enters in and he asks, "Do you have anything to eat?" Which is kind of a furthering of what he said as some of his last words as he died on the cross, "I thirst." And then on the Sea of Galilee, Jesus will ask if they have caught anything to eat. And then when they make it back to the shore, the scared fishermen realize that it is Jesus because he has breakfast prepared for them. And then he asks the powerful question, "Peter, do you love me? And if you do, feed my sheep." You can see that food is way more than just for the body. It is truly for the soul. And if you were to take a look, for example, even in Luke's Gospel, chapter 10, verse 8, we're going to see how Jesus very particularly will say that food is a way to evangelize. He will say, "Eat what is set before you." He's telling his disciples, do not be snobs. Make sure that you eat what is set before you. And then even if you just take a look at, for example, in the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 10, after Peter kind of is confronted with the reality of eating things that are different than he's used to eating. He used to eat kosher, but now he's being challenged and invited to eat other things. But he will say, no, I can't eat that because it's unclean. It's unclean. But then a revelation will come to him in Acts 10, where this kind of blanket screen, this sheet covers his face, and he sees all of these animals, and he's basically told to slaughter and eat. He says, "No, I don't want to because it is unclean." But the voice from heaven will say, basically, what God has made, no one shall consider it unclean. This is pretty powerful stuff, because clean eating is almost like the most important thing we can do these days. But unfortunately, this is kind of a funny video. It's almost as if everything we eat these days is unclean. Check out this little video that kind of talks about the food movement of the modern world and how we're kind of stuck. Check this out.
Trying to shop for healthy food in 2023.
Throw the white bread away. If it's white, put it out of sight.
Cereal is probably the worst way you can possibly start your morning.
A lot of protein bars are really bad for you because of all the sugar in them.
Take it easy on the red meat, beef or pork. And red meat is correlated with so many different cancers, with heart disease, cardiovascular disease.
Vegetables are bad for us. They're actually harmful to our health due to certain chemicals that are found in vegetables.
Number one, we talked about how eggs can be a trigger for acne, which I did know this, but he explained that the kind of acne that comes from eggs is very specific.
Fruit is absolutely terrible for you. It's high in sugar and raises insulin levels.
If you have a pan like this made from Teflon, throw it out. Non-stick cookware made from Teflon contains forever chemicals that have been linked to cancer.
Yeah, that's kind of how a person feels these days. I mean, everything is bad for you. And it's almost as if, if you take a look at this, for example, it is absolutely true. Everyone on TikTok is just basically telling us everything is bad. But maybe what we've got to do is investigate a little bit more about what God has created versus what man is creating, which is why I want to jump into a deeper discussion when it comes to culture and food. Well, first of all, I want you to know that food itself is a gift from God. And whenever we take people out of the equation and replace people with science and manufacturing and robots even, then we can see why people should be very concerned when it comes to eating. We are probably eating very bad things. I don't think this has really showed up anywhere, but the farmers in Europe are just revolting against a lot of governments because of all of these intrinsic, crazy kind of restrictions that they're placing on food. So I know that this might be a little old news, but just check out how these farmers have all revolted. I mean, they, as a matter of fact, were able to shut down the government in many ways because the government is basically playing God and basically saying that, if you are farming, it's bad for the environment. Come on. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And it's really a shame that these days people are turning more to science than to people to feed them. So I want you to just check this out. This is a very interesting study, report, kind of story that's been swirling the internet because of vinegar, which is actually supposed to be great for you. But unfortunately, celebrities have gotten in the way. Check this out.
Vinegar is not supposed to rot. One of our most beloved apple cider vinegar brands, Bragg's, that a lot of you use as a health food, was bought out by some celebrities, as you probably already know, including Carie and her husband and a group of others. Apparently there were some tech billionaires involved also. Apple cider vinegar is now going viral on social media because people are finding tons and tons of worms growing in the vinegar. Worms, which are typically a sign of a food that has gone rotten. Meanwhile, vinegar doesn't rot. What happened to Bragg's apple cider vinegar after it got bought out by these celebrities, and what are all these social media videos about?
Well, I think it's kind of obvious. The industry of food is being replaced by celebrities and by science, all in an effort to, make us healthy. But I honestly think it is intended to make us sick. I want you to take a look at this other video because it really shows how tragically dangerous food is becoming these days. This has to do, however, with Bill Gates. Yes, what does he have to do with food? He's supposed to be a computer programmer, which we know he is, and he was just an investor, but that's another story. But this is just disturbing.
So one of the biggest mysteries in the organic produce world right now is how did the new Appeal coating with financial backing from Bill Gates, get approved for use on organic produce. You'll see these appeal stickers on lots of produce items now. It means the produce has a coating on it that seals it up tight against anything getting in or out, preserves it longer, like the introduction of the refrigerator. Great, but what's in this coating? Well, it seems to be shrouded in mystery. The product intended to be organic, listed as Organapeel, is registered with the EPA as a pesticide with a rather short and cryptic ingredient list. Active ingredient, citric acid at 0.66%. Other ingredients, not named, 99.34%. And that's 100%. Great, it's all accounted for. Maybe it's listed that way because citric acid could qualify as organic if it's not from a synthetic source. But what about the other 99.34%? Because I'm supposed to eat this coating. Oh, and get this, the EPA requires this caution on the label. Wash thoroughly with soap and water after handling and before eating. The certificate the Organic Material Review Institute issued to it that approved its use on organics lists it as a fungicide with no ingredient specified. I'm not sure what that's based on, but this is starting to smell. It reeks of influence peddling. And the antiseptic for that smell is always sunlight with a liberal splash of transparency. I don't know about you, but I'm finding appeal rather unappealing. I don't think I'll dip my produce in this.
I would definitely stay away from anything that has the appeal label on it. It's probably going to be marked as less expensive because they're going to assume that most shoppers for food are uneducated, which is why they always go for the cheaper deal, which doesn't always mean that it's good for you. And so if you are truly concerned about what you're putting in your body, because Jesus is, I would stay away from things that are not real. This is another incredibly disturbing kind of video that talks about meat and how meat can now be fake.
A juicy, sizzling steak made by computer. While obtaining regular meat is a process that's been taking place for millennia, cow, butcher, beef, Redefined Meat, a meat alternative startup out of Israel, makes their product using a highly technical process. The mix of soy and pea protein, chickpeas, beetroot, nutritional yeast, and coconut fat is formed into steak-like shapes using a 3D printer.
Our goal is to become the largest meat company in the world just by harnessing technology instead of animals.
Meat substitutes are not new. But unlike the soy-based crumbles that mimic ground beef, Redefined Meat's product is designed to act, taste, and cut like flank steak.
This is the holy grail of alternative meat.
But the most important part, how does it taste? This diner was happy.
The texture feels right. Even the smell smells like the real thing. Really authentic. For me, it's revolution.
For her, it smelled and tasted like meat, and it was revolutionary. Well, why do we even need a revolution when it comes to food? I mean, certainly there needs to be a returning towards real food. But why is there such a push for science to replace people when it comes to actually growing food? I find it incredibly disturbing that our culture wants us to just eat what they are serving. And I'm sorry, Jesus, you might not like this, but I am not eating what Bill Gates is serving. I am not eating fake meat. And I am certainly not going to eat that nasty vinegar, which is normally supposed to be good for us. But sorry, if vinegar is rotting, which it's not supposed to be rotting, and then it turns into just a bottle full of worms, what are we doing? Well, here's my commentary, because I think we need to pay attention because the devil is real. Here's my commentary when it comes to food and what we're putting into our system. As I mentioned, the devil is very real. The devil makes bad things look good. The devil makes all of this fake food appealing, no pun intended, but it really isn't whatsoever. It's making basically a mockery of what God made, and guess what? Turns humans into gods because they think they can now create food out of nothing. And that's why we need to approach food with more humility. It's a word in Latin, you know this, it comes from dirt, because that's where food comes from. It comes from the soil, and it creates plants and vegetation that animals who walk and are close to the earth eat. And yes, we harvest the animals. It's so frustrating to know that there are movements taking over the food industry, namely the vegans, the vegetarians. I don't care if you like vegetables. You know, Daniel, for example, and the three men who were kept in prison because they didn't want to eat the king's food, and so they were given vegetables and they were proven to be healthier. Well, vegetables are great. But guess what? I like meat. And I don't want vegetarians or vegans to turn their cult, because it kind of is a cult, into a moral law for me. Their moralizing kind of drives me crazy. And they use this kind of phrase, I don't want to kill animals. Well, guess what? Animals kill animals. Why don't they just kill the animals that just killed animals? What is the issue of human reality? Because for thousands and thousands of years, humans have been eating meat. And guess what? Back in the day, when people were eating fat, like the French, and when Americans were eating French fries fried at McDonald's with beef tallow, not the synthetic oil nonsense, they were healthier. People were just healthier eating food, not fake food. Well, I think it's really a ploy by the devil, once again, to turn vegans into the now moral authorities because they want to save the planet, which is the other cult that is truly dictating our food consciousness, because they firmly believe, and I'm hearing stories that there are studies saying that a homegrown garden, like homegrown vegetables from your garden, is doing damage to the environment. You've got to be kidding me. There really is an effort to save the planet by killing off, what, a couple billion people? Which we know the World Economic Forum, climate change activists, and vegans would love for there to be less people in the world. So I say, go ahead. If you off yourself, there will be less people in the world. But no, they seem to have this war against farming and people who eat farm-raised food. There have been government agencies that have raided, most recently, an Amish farmer who has a store where he sells natural food to people. And it's just unbelievable, the attacks against people who just want to eat natural food. Because again, the devil is in the details. The devil wants now to perhaps even replace God by serving us food that the devil makes. And it's just incredibly sad to know that there are, again, cult groups, and I do consider vegans as part of a cult group, because they firmly believe that taking the life of an animal, slaughtering it, is a sin. And so they impose this moral kind of guilt if you eat meat. And the vegans are certainly going to be part of the climate change cult activists. You already know how I feel about that. When people say climate change, it's like, I'm sorry, a law that says, let's just off a bunch of cows because cow flatulation affects the ozone. Do they honestly think that that's going to change the world? It's a ridiculousness that truly is characteristic of anyone who's in a cult. They no longer have logical, critical thinking skills. But here's something even more disturbing. I just discovered this because there was this story about Disney serving human meat. And so Snopes which we know is just such an accurate website for finding the truth. They basically made this report, and it's kind of comical. Listen to this. A November 30th, 2023 article stated that the Trader Sam's Grog Grotto restaurant at Disney would start serving 2 menu items made with human meat. Snopes labels this as satire. And so it says, Disney, known for its cuisine. In fact, food is so important that there is a no-ride ticket option. The Disney ticket allows you to go to Disney World, but not ride any of the rides and just eat and shop. Well, they say they're now serving human meat. And Snopes basically says that this isn't true. But they also cite, according to Cornell University Legal Information Institute, there aren't any laws on the books targeting the act of cannibalism itself as a punishable offense. Instead, state and federal laws make it impossible to obtain and consume human flesh in more indirect ways, like charging the assumed cannibal with murder, regardless of the consent of the victim, or with the desecration of a corpse. Snopes doesn't recommend attempting to consume human flesh in any capacity. But many claims about Disney are just kind of crazy and somewhat satirical. But are they? For example, Moana would be the first transgender princess, and that the Disney castle would be removed, and neither was true. Or is it? There's just something kind of creepy when it comes to what the world is trying to serve us. And that's why I think it's incredibly important to pay attention to what we are consuming, body, mind, and spirit. But I don't want to digress. I'll just simply say this. Food should never be made with science. Science can certainly help to protect food, to increase and multiply the volume of food so that we can feed the world. But maybe science should also pay attention to why there is waste, because we waste more food than can actually feed the world a couple times over. And so I think science just needs to have a conscience, a consciousness, and pay attention to where it really can help the food production sustainability and the production so that we can, produce healthy food for people, but also get maybe into the social sciences and why is there hunger in the world? Why? I mean, I'm just so proud of Italy banning kind of like this fake meat nonsense. I studied culinary in Italy. It's where I kind of fell in love with the whole understanding of cuisine as a theology. And I'm just kind of surprised that America, as wealthy as it is, with all of the opportunities to make amazing food, is turning to this nonsense. Please be careful about what you eat. I can simply say that if there's one thing that the Lenten season reminds us to do is eat more fish. And why? Because fish was that secret symbol of Christians. It showed that we ate what Jesus gave to us because he was the bait that we basically were attracted to and hopefully will consume. He says we are what we eat. And besides, the word fish is that Greek acronym Jesus Christus Theos Huios Soter, which is Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. And that's why we need to eat more fish. Here's just a little happier story that I discovered about the power of eating fish. Even if it's a little too fishy for me personally, apparently sardines is the way to go. Check this out.
If you want to reduce your risk of diabetes, you should eat 1.5 1.5 cans of sardines each week. That was the result of a clinical study I'll throw in the comments below. They took a group of individuals who were pre-diabetic and they split them in half. One group ate sardines, the other group didn't. And what they found is that in the group that ate sardines, 1.5 cans each week, their risk of diabetes dramatically decreased. Blood sugar levels decreased, blood insulin levels decreased, and they also found that cholesterol levels decreased, triglyceride levels went down, and blood pressure was also reduced. That's because sardines contain omega-3 fatty acids, rich source of vitamin D. They contain a really cool molecule called taurine, and all of these are really good at supporting healthy blood sugar and cholesterol levels.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Eat more fish. And guess what? The Fridays in the Lenten season are a perfect time to peel open a can of sardines and bon appetit. And even though it might not be the most desirable flavor, at least I know where it comes from. It comes from God. And God is the one who made food. And what God has made, no one shall consider unclean. Even climate change activists and vegans. You are in the wrong. And it's sad to me to hear that people don't like natural food anymore. They'd rather eat something synthetic. Well, for me, I am going to open up a can of sardines and I'm going to try to enjoy it on a Friday in the Lenten season, and I hope you enjoy me. Make sure that you let me know what you're eating on a Friday during the Lenten season. Please know that I've actually created 4 videos, a cooking for one video on what you can do with just one slab of salmon, cooking 4 different and delicious, easy recipes. And I think it'll be great for you if you're cooking for one, or just multiply it by the number of people in your family. You can actually find that on our social media pages, which I certainly hope you follow along. But I want to say thank you for at least watching this show, being a part of it. Make sure you subscribe, leave your comments, tell others to like and share, and please, again, consider supporting us on Patreon, because guess what? On Patreon, we also have some pretty great recipes that you can use and eat real food. God bless you. Thanks for watching. Stay hungry for God.